I wanted to start by saying something about who Mumia Abu-Jamal is, because some people may not know. He is a former Black Panther and an award-winning journalist who was convicted in 1982 of killing a policeman in Philadelphia. He actually was running to the aid of his brother, who was being beaten by that cop, when the policeman shot him. The policeman himself was then also shot, and Mumia was fitted up for his murder, even though he was unconscious for most of the time of the incident. He has spent nearly 27 years in prison, most of that time on Philadelphia's death row, and his legal case is at a critical point right at this moment, because he has an appeal before the Supreme Court in the US on the issue of racism in jury selection. He was convicted in a trial that was completely drenched in racism. For example, when selecting the jury, the prosecution rejected twice as many black people as white people, so that in a population in Philadelphia at the time of 60% people of colour, there were only 2 black people on that jury. The judge was a flaming racist. He banned Mumia from whole parts of his trial because Mumia protested at being denied the right to represent himself. Like many thousands of people, his lawyer was no good, never called any witnesses, and never did his job, and Mumia wanted to represent himself and was prevented from doing so. The evidence that was used to convict him was unreliable. If you want more details, you have to read our pamphlet, because I don't have time to tell you all the outrageous things that happened. The case came to trial in Philadelphia, where the mayor, Frank Rizzo, oversaw what had been described as an epidemic of police brutality. One key issue was that an organisation based in Philadelphia called MOVE, which was a multiracial alternative community, was really at the forefront of campaigning against that harassment and targeting of black people. And Mumia was one of the few journalists that was ready to report on their activities accurately. He was, and still is, a campaigning journalist, and he has been targeted, like many other journalists, for reporting the truth of what he sees. Together with the Global Women's Strike, we've supported Mumia for many years. In 2004, Selma and myself, we asked to visit Mumia because we wanted his advice on an issue of anti-racism in Philadelphia that was connected to the work that we were doing there as a network. He was very glad to be in touch. He knew of Selma and of her work, and of the work of her husband, her late husband, C.L.R. James. So we visited him, and since that point, both Selma and Phoebe from Philadelphia have visited regularly. We keep in touch with letters, and occasionally we get the thrill of being called by him at home to be able to keep in touch. And when somebody's in prison, you really feel the isolation very, very strongly. So having a phone call is a very big moment. We were so stunned by him when we visited that we were determined to work out what we could do to help. What Mumia wants is a new trial. That is his first and priority demand. He wants a new trial so that he can put his account of what happened before a jury, which he has never had a chance to do. There is a big movement in support of Mumia. Many famous people have come on at different points. But there is one major problem within that movement, which is that there are a few people focused on sabotage, focused on undermining the demand for a new trial, and saying that instead we should all rally behind the general demand of free Mumia. Now I have to give you their reason, but I have to quote them because I really cannot find a way of paraphrasing what they say, because it never makes any sense to me. Okay, what they say is that by focusing on a new trial, we are peddling illusions in the justice of the capitalist courts. Our response to that is, what does Mumia want? If he is pressing for a new trial, then that's what we're doing too. And we want him out by any means necessary. And if at this point the most promising way to do that is by legal means, then that's what we will do. We set about inventing new ways to bring Mumia's case as much as we could to the public's attention, and we wanted to build on the existing movement, which, for all its flaws, had definitely kept him alive up until now. We used the particular expertise and the networks that we had to gather support among professionals and others, many of whom had not been appealed to by the campaign up until now. We focused on 3 initiatives. One was that we worked with a distinguished lawyer here in the UK, who is a good friend of ours, to do a letter to the US courts protesting about the racism of the trial and Mumia's treatment, and asking the US courts to redress that, to deal with it. It was quickly signed by over 150 very prestigious lawyers in this country, and it had a big impact on the US courts there. The second was that we worked with Margaret Prescott from Global Women's Strike and from KPFK, a radio station in the US, on doing a letter for journalists to sign, recognising Mumia as a colleague, as a journalist, and protesting at him being targeted for his campaign journalism. And then finally, most recently, Selma proposed to Mumia, and he was pleased to accept the idea of writing a book on his work as a jailhouse lawyer. He, among many hundreds of people, which in fact we're just uncovering really a movement of jailhouse lawyers, work within prisons on their own cases and on others in a very similar way to what Peace has described in relation to the asylum work. You're faced with a situation where there's no legal representation, so you better find out yourself what's going on and how best to defend you. In the course of doing that, you often end up training yourself so that you can help others, and that is what Mumia has done for many years. And it's an aspect of him and his experience in life that hasn't come out. And we're determined to bring that out to counter the way that he has been characterised, first of all, by the police union, the Fraternal Order of Police in the US, who have a lot of power and have really promoted a racist character assassination of Mumia.